This podcast is sponsored by the book, The Biased Brain, by Bo Bennett, PhD. Dive into the world of cognitive biases and transform your understanding of reality. Get your copy today at thebiasedbrain.com.
How optimism bias shapes our thinking and decisions. Discover how optimism bias influences decision-making and human cognition, and learn to recognize cognitive biases in everyday life. Why we're wired to see the sunshine. Understanding optimism bias. Have you ever noticed how, despite all the news and stats telling you otherwise, most people still think that bad things won't happen to them? Like when you're driving and the odds of getting into an accident are definitely there, but you feel this inner confidence that you'll make it home just fine. Or when you start a new project or business and just know it's going to succeed. Well, that's a perfect example of optimism bias at work. Optimism bias is this really fascinating psychological quirk where people tend to overestimate the likelihood of positive outcomes and underestimate the potential for negative ones when it comes to their own lives. It's like our brains are wired to expect the best, even if reality might suggest otherwise. So why does this happen? It's linked to something broader called cognitive biases, which are basically systematic ways our brains twist information. Understanding cognitive biases means realizing that our brain doesn't always process things objectively. Instead, it filters and sometimes distorts the data based on past experiences, emotions, or just the brain's own quirky shortcuts. What's interesting about optimism bias is that it's a double-edged sword. On one hand, it's a great tool for motivation and resilience. When people believe they'll succeed, they're more likely to take on challenges, recover from setbacks, and keep going. This bias enhances creativity and problem-solving by pushing us forward rather than paralyzing us with fear. However, this biased brain tendency also causes some pretty significant issues, especially when it comes to risk assessment and bias in decision-making. For example, someone might ignore warning signs when taking big financial risks or neglect their health, thinking, "It won't happen to me." The flip side of optimism bias can make it harder to take critical thinking and biases seriously, because it feels more comfortable to assume everything will work out. Now here's where human cognition gets even more interesting. Optimism bias isn't just about blind hopefulness. It's also connected to how we process memories and information. When thinking about the future, people tend to imagine idealized outcomes rather than worst-case scenarios. This selective recall skews judgment, reinforcing positive expectations and burying doubts. Why do we have optimism bias? Evolutionarily, it helped humans survive. Being hopeful about the future meant taking risks necessary for progress, like exploring new territories or trying novel food sources, even when those risks carried danger. Can we overcome it? Not completely. Since optimism bias is baked into how our minds work, awareness is key. Practicing mindfulness and learning about other biases can help us check our assumptions and make better decisions. How does it affect everyday life? From health habits to investing to relationships, optimism bias colors how we judge time, effort, and risk. Recognizing it can help us balance hope with realism. If you're curious about learning more about the quirks of our brain and why it sometimes tricks us, I highly recommend checking out the book The Biased Brain by Bo Bennett, PhD. It delves into various cognitive biases, including optimism bias, unpacking the science in a way that's super approachable and eye-opening. Understanding how our minds work, from optimism bias to other common cognitive quirks, isn't just fascinating, it's empowering. It helps us sharpen our critical thinking and biases and encourages us to look at situations more clearly. So if you want to start making decisions with better insight, explore the book and unravel the secrets of your mind today.